Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. You smell that? Smells like review season, fresh out of the oven, served on a dish, and this recipe is called Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it's a dish that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, since the rumors of a Viking-based Assassin's Creed game. It's been years in the making. Here we are today talking about this game. I've had it for about 10 days now, so I'm very excited to share my thoughts. Huge shout out to Ubisoft for the early copy of the game. Now, for those of you who are new to my style of reviews, just know it's all about the data, no spoilers, but I want to give you guys as much information as possible so you can make an educated purchasing decision without having the game ruined for you. So at the end of the video, I'll tell you if I would buy the game, would I wait for a sale, what level of a sale would I wait for, would I just outright pass on the game? That's my style of review, so if you like that, hit the subscribe button because we have a lot of other reviews coming here on the channel as next gen really starts to heat up. So I'm very excited to share my thoughts on some upcoming games before and after their launch because yeah, no one gave me next gen consoles early, so like I'm right there with you guys. All right, let's talk about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The first thing that really impressed me upon firing this game up was the vast amount of settings, whether it's difficulty in the exploration between Adventurer, Explorer, and Pathfinder. One of these difficulties actually allowing you to completely turn off the HUD, have it be as minimal as possible, so it enforces your discovery. If you've played any Assassin's Creed game or most Ubisoft games, you'll know that they love when you chase that waypoint. This game has an option to outright get rid of that and just study your environment. I tinkered with it a little bit, and at times it was difficult, but I will say I'm happy it's there because it is a very fun way to play a game, and it makes me appreciate Ubisoft's world even more. Also, they included combat difficulty, stealth difficulties too, plus great accessibility options, which I felt the need to shout out. We've been seeing Ubisoft do this with accessibility options up front. We've seen EA even do it with Star Wars Squadrons. I want to make sure that people know that these companies are really pushing accessibility options, and I think that's a great thing for games. Now, as for the story, it begins with Eivor's family getting killed by another Viking clan, which plants the seeds for an early revenge tale. Now, obviously, it spirals beyond that as you start to see a Creed presence in a way that I don't want to spoil, but I want to make sure people know that the Creed has a big involvement in this story. A lot of folks looked at Assassin's Creed Valhalla and went, this isn't an Assassin's Creed game, but au contraire, there is a lot of the Creed here, and I think that's a great thing. I don't want to get into it. In fact, I don't think I even can, but just know there is a Assassin's Creed level presence here. And I know it's kind of sad to emphasize when the title is in the game, but when you look at Odyssey, where it was kind of lacking in that department, here there is a presence, and I think it did a really good job weaving everything together and not making it feel forced either. What's more interesting, and I'll be curious to see the public's response on this, but Assassin's Creed Valhalla really takes its time in the early going. Now, it's not like Assassin's Creed 3 where you play a 6-hour beginning of the game before it actually allows you to have control. But you're, at least in my experience, in the prologue area for 4 hours before it lets you go to England. That doesn't mean you can't explore, go off the beaten path, see what Norway has to offer, but still, ladies and gentlemen, it takes a while for you to really be let loose and doing whatever you want in the open world. And some people don't like that in Assassin's Creed games. However, the trade-off here is I think the setup for the story is way better, and I think that it really rewards things later on. Because as the prologue ends, that's where you start to see Valhalla shift into the RPG status that it's really been marketing itself as. Now, Odyssey was an RPG, but there weren't, in my opinion, a ton of choices. When it comes to Valhalla, though, a lot of choices are made, and they take direct inspiration from, of all games, Dragon Age Inquisition. I know what you're thinking if you've been a viewer of my channel for a while. I just did a 2020 review of Dragon Age Inquisition. You could check that out too. I get it. You're probably worried, but they take a lot of Dragon Age Inquisition's ideas. They don't base them off an MMO. They don't make them grindy, and it works pretty well. So let's start off by talking about the Alliance map. You'll go to this map and you'll pick a region of the world to pledge yourself to, and that'll bring you into a storyline. So each region has its own self-contained storyline. This is where the game can possibly have pacing issues. Now, I thought that most regions in the game had interesting stories to tell, and it's a while before you start to see everything come together. What I've noticed between the prologue and how the story sets itself up, it does demand a degree of patience, but I never felt like there was a time where something uninteresting was happening. It's just that it's hard to get invested in characters that you're constantly leapfrogging away from to other regions of the world. And then they eventually all kind of start to come together, and it starts to make a little bit more sense, and you start to see your impact on the world. So what really carries the weight is some of the choices you're making, because that's the most interesting part, is how am I going to shape the world? Now, what was cool is Ubisoft actually gave me a guide to show me sort of what the choices would play out as after I was done with the game, of course, so I could see all the ramifications. And I was pretty impressed at, number one, how many permutations there were, but also decisions you make in the early game that could come back and bite you in the butt in the late game. And I really thought that was phenomenal. They did take the RPG aspect of this game seriously, and I think it's for the better. I know Assassin's Creed has had a bit of an identity issue, but this for me works. It's not heavy on role-playing as, say, Wasteland 3 or Divinity Original Sin 2. You're not going to get the levels of intermittent, earth-shattering choices that you would get in those games. But when it comes to this one, ladies and gentlemen, I think Ubisoft did a really good job making an RPG here. And even when it comes to the story, the Animus sections are as involved as you want them to be. So within the first 4 hours, they popped me out once. Then I played for like another 20. And then they popped me out again. Like, it is very uninvolved. However, once again, the way they weaved it in, it was a lot more interesting in my opinion. I think the way that they do this is by connecting it to the direct Assassin's Creed story. It's not this offshoot separate thing happening. They're woven together, which we've seen a little bit of in Origins as well as Odyssey, but this time around I think they just handled it a lot better, because what information they present you with is enough. You know what they're doing in the real world, and that's fine. But if you want to learn more, you can interact with people, you can converse with them, you can watch certain tapes. There's different things you can do to learn more about what's happening in the real world. And I think that's good, because it's once again one of those situations where you choose, do I want to be super involved in this or not? I chose to be more involved, and I thought it was rewarding. I found it quite interesting how everything unfolded. So while the story does take a lot of time to get itself going, I really do believe that once you arrive in England, you start to set out to claim land and remove the kings that are in place and start to establish your own influence. The idea of it being an RPG isn't just meshed into a marketing statement. It feels like this could only work as a role-playing game. And so that to me is great news. So overall, the story, I enjoyed it. Is it one of the best Ubisoft's ever told? I don't think so. But the control you have over the tale, seeing the world react to your choices, and the just beauty of course, Valhalla itself, of England, is incredible. And it's such a well-realized world. It's fun to be in. So with that, let's talk a little bit about gameplay. One of the biggest complaints coming off of Assassin's Creed Odyssey was, of course, bloat. It's that a lot of people loved Odyssey, but there was level gating issues. There were so many side quests, and when you just wanted to straight shoot that story, you could not. The great news here is that while Assassin's Creed Valhalla is an RPG, and they do have power levels for certain regions of the world, it's never once held me back from the story, and that's with opting out of a lot of side content in the early going to really test the limits of the system. Like, how much of this story can I just shoot straight through? And I could have kept going. There really wasn't a single point in the game where I was walled off and I had to go back and grind or level up or do quests, and that's great. Part of that's because the progression loop in this game is so fun and rewarding on multiple levels. Number one, when pretty much any quest is complete, you're going to earn skill points. When you spend skill points on the skill tree going one of three ways, whether it's the assassination tree, it's of course the melee tree, or the range tree, you'll earn a variety of abilities and bonuses and perks, and these can all be used to increase your power level. Nothing to do with the gear specifically that you are wearing, just the skill points that you spend. And so this is great news, because you're not going to be limited at all, because you're always leveling up from literally anything that you do. World events, looting, story missions, the game is always progressing you, and it never wants to hold you too close to the chest and not let you go, which has been one of Ubisoft's bigger mistakes. They don't have this game as bloated either. Each region consists of three things: artifacts, mysteries, as well as wealth. So how each of these works is wealth will give you guessed it, supplies, materials, but also it'll give you armor, it'll give you weapons. Not everyone's dropping that stuff, so you're not sifting through loads and loads of armor. I like this. We live in a day and age where everyone wants to throw 20 pounds of loot your way, and it gets really frustrating. It loses its luster. When you get loot in this game, like a unique piece of armor, it feels good because it is unique. It's not the golden chest plate of the gods, and then you have the bronze chest plate of the gods. Like, it is just like the huntsman chest armor, and it's like, yes, cool, this is great, this is unique, and I worked for this and I earned it. So it's Also, the deliberate emphasis on this progression loop that's really carrying the game in a specific way. World events are the new side quests. So there aren't people you're going to talk to and they're going to give you this full-on storyline. That may hurt some people's experiences, but some of these world events do connect. Furthermore, these world events don't take longer than, say, 10 minutes. They're usually their own mini puzzles, mini stories. A lot of them are very goofy. Like there's one I did where I found someone in the sewers and I gave them viper eggs and they ripped ass. And that was it. That they ripped ass. And then I went above into the town and people were puking. Like, it's incredible. It was hilarious though. And it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, that's great. Like that was so much better than them trying to tell me this serious, compelling tale that takes an hour and I level up once. The pacing of the world is far better. The looting in the world is far better. And as for the artifacts, these are okay. They're kind of just collectibles, alongside, of course, the synchronization points that the series is really known for. And so, yeah, you'll be checking a couple boxes on the map, but I think that the progression loop is very worthwhile. Now, why is that also? It's not just about your character, it's about the settlement, because when you're getting those supplies from, say, the wealth, or from doing those raids, which we'll talk about after, you'll take all these back to your settlement, where you'll be able to unlock new stores, new places for people to live. People you've met in the world will come and live at your settlement. New quests will become available. It is a wonderfully realized system. One of my favorite parts of Assassin's Creed is the homestead. I really like the homestead in Assassin's Creed 3. Sorry, but I'm not sorry, actually. It is good. I like it. I'll always remember beating Assassin's Creed 3, moving on. I came back years later, I picked it up, and the homestead was its own game. It was just fun to play. You're going to find a similar vibe here when it comes to Valhalla's settlement mode. The difference is, and I know a lot of my viewers feel like settlement mode is just like a tainted word in their mind. It's not like Fallout 4, okay? Relax. As I said, you're going to be out in that world. You're going to be doing things like raids. You're going to be getting wealth from various points on the map, and you'll be getting supplies that you can then spend on either upgrading your settlement or maybe upgrading your armor, upgrading the pouches in your character's kit, like the amount of rations you can carry, that type of stuff. And so overall, everything you do in the world is rewarding, but it's never holding you down for hours at a time. So you can go to the story and then go off the beaten path, do a world event or two, and then go back to the story. It's not like everything is like this dedicated session of time. It very much respects your time, and that's a rare thing for Ubisoft, and they've handled it really well here with its entire progression loop. I cannot exclaim enough how much I enjoyed just going through the motions with the game, whether it was getting that loot, whether it was going on a raid. Raids are great, by the way. So you get your own longship, you see a marker on the map that has the two axes crossed over, and you go on over and you raid the beaches. Once you steal all the loot in the land, that's it, the raid's over. But there is a big battle sense from Assassin's Creed Odyssey that we've seen before, brought to a new level here with the raids in Valhalla. Now, depending on how you pace them in the world, they can become a little monotonous if you're just doing them over and over and over again. But for me, I tried to just spread them out amongst other things I was doing, whether it was story missions or mini bosses in the world, end game content. There's a lot of that stuff thanks to the power levels where it does feel rewarding once you beat the game to learn that there's more stuff to do. But overall, the raids were solid. There are also assaults that you can do, which are much higher level raids. These assaults have you like getting on top of a battering ram and like running it into a wall to knock down their barricades. So it's the same idea as raids, but it's on a much more grand level. I found them very enjoyable to do. And overall, the game as it played felt solid. Now, let's talk about combat, because I feel like combat in Valhalla is going to be hit or miss, to be quite frank with you. So you have your light attacks, your heavy attacks, you can block or parry, there's stamina management. When you knock an enemy down and their stamina is completely blown out, you can do a stun attack, you can stomp on them when they're on the ground. There are abilities for both ranged attacks as well as up close attacks. So there are a lot of ways to approach combat. Like, of course, you're going to start off with the axe in your hand, but I got a perk which allowed me to take a two-handed sword and wield it with one hand. So I'm walking around like an anime character with one little shield and a gigantic broadsword on my shoulder, just lugging this thing around in combat. And that was a really cool feeling. So the way that we're going to play might end up being a little bit different, but sadly, the trade-off here is sometimes combat just doesn't feel good. I don't know how else to describe this. Maybe it's because I played it on a PS4. I know a lot of people have had next-gen codes for this game. Like I said in the beginning of the review, I don't have next-gen systems yet at the time of making this review, so I was just playing on my base PS4. Maybe if things are smoother frame rate-wise, that it'll feel better to play, but as it stands now, locking onto people wasn't really rewarding you as a player because you'd have 4 other enemies around you. There weren't a lot of AoE attacks. So overall, you found yourself kind of dipping in and out of combat, and it just didn't feel right sometimes. That's the best way to describe it, to be honest with you. It works mechanically. It's more thoughtful mechanically. It's not just ability spams, because as you attack enemies, you're going to build up an adrenaline meter, and then you'll spend those adrenaline bars on those abilities. So it's not just ability spam, which is really good. It's just that the in-betweens there don't feel all that nice, in my opinion. But it didn't detract from the game at all. It's just something I consistently noticed. But since combat is so much on the forefront, do keep that in mind. That may be something that hurts your experience. For me, I was enjoying things like exploring, reading, just checking out all the secrets in the world, doing the quests, seeing how the choices played out. To me, that was way more enjoyable, where the combat was just sort of a piece of the puzzle. It wasn't like the ultimate thing bringing me in, but there is a lot of combat. So if you don't like that, just know in general that it does feel a little clunky. As for stealth gameplay, I didn't do stealth in this game that much, even when I wanted to. It felt like it was very much discouraged, and that was one of my biggest issues throughout my experiences. Sometimes I did want to go stealth, but the AI was very reactive in a bad way. So sometimes you'll be able to put on the hood and sort of cloak yourself into what's called a distrust area. If the area is red, it means they're going to attack you right away. But if it's orange, it means they don't really trust you. And if they get close to you, they'll suspect you. But like, people will be a mile out and be like, hey, who is that over there? It's like, okay, I get it, because in real life, that's how it works. But in a video game, it's a little frustrating, to be quite truthful. So for me, the stealth gameplay, I kind of avoided. I'd try to stealth until I got caught, and then that's it. I'd kill everyone. And so sometimes stealth felt like not the means to an end that I was really looking for, and it wasn't satisfying. Part of this was also, I didn't use a predator bow, which is like the drawback. Take your time, get a headshot quietly. I used a quick bow. So I was more so kitted to go at things a little more aggressively, but still, I never found the AI to be working with me that well when it came to stealth gameplay. Maybe it's a difficulty option. I didn't tinker with it on that level, but it's something that comes to mind here as I'm speaking to you all, that you may want to mess with that if you start to have the same issues. Maybe making the AI intentionally dumber so that your stealth experience is better. Now, while all of this is great, the world activities where you pillage for wealth, you collect these artifacts, you fight random bosses, performing raids or sync points, there is one thing I need to bring up, and that is bugginess. From textures failing to load to objectives in general actually failing to load or even count, where sometimes I'd have to reload entire quests, frames dropping once again on a base PS4. Ladies and gentlemen, this game did not run that great on my base PS4. It was crashing at times, which is really weird to see, and Ubisoft struggled a little bit with this. I mentioned in my Legion review, it crashed 5 times, and now with Valhalla, multiple crashes, and more frustrating. I don't really care about crashes. The only thing that annoyed me there was the load times getting into the world were multiple minutes. So that was a little irritating, but really what bothered me more was when the quest objectives failed and I'd have to reload. Then I have to go through that long loading screen again. And sometimes the autosave wasn't far back enough where I'd have to load an even older save and then do the whole quest over again. And that happened way too many times. Or a key object falling through the map, an RPG player's worst nightmare occurred here. So there are some bugs. The game does need a patch, and that did sour my experience a little bit, but it's hard for me to take a look at all I enjoyed from the game and then those small sets of issues and really say, hey, this is not worth it. I will say, if what I said there does put you on alert a little bit, of course, wait for a little sale. But as it stands for me, I really liked Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I thought this game was fun and it lived up to a lot of my personal hype. And that's really surprising to say, because I felt this game had a lot going for it. And usually when Ubisoft tries to do a lot of everything, they drop the ball on some front. But I feel like they addressed the complaints of Odyssey just right. I feel like the world was fun to explore. I felt like it respected my time. I thought more choices in the story compared to Odyssey was great. I just really enjoyed my time with the game. The combat can be a bit of a slog at times. Stealth gameplay is not the best. The game does need a patch or so. It will have some familiarity from Dragon Age Inquisition, but once again, I just played this game to completion all DLC recently, and even that recent experience did not impact what I had seen inside Valhalla. Like, they even have a throne system, everybody. You can sit on a throne, cross your legs, and make calls on little scuffles happening in your settlement. Someone played Dragon Age Inquisition and said, hey, can we make some of these like better? And they did that. So I appreciate it for that. So that'll do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Overall, my rating is wait for a tiny sale if maybe what I mentioned about the pacing as well as the combat did hold you back a little bit. But with it actually being an Assassin's Creed game in a lot of ways, but also having a good formula and a good progression loop, I find it very hard to say, hey, this is one that you should outright avoid, especially now that Cyberpunk is out of November. This might be one really worth picking up. I know a lot of people are afraid of Ubisoft open world games, so by all means, I always encourage this, please watch more reviews. But for me, I liked it enough to say you can go out and buy this confidently. There's a lot of content here. There's a lot of diversity here. It was very enjoyable to play. And so, yeah, I had a good time with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you think of the game. If there's any questions I can answer, fire away down below. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll talk with you soon. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to all the patrons and all the members who make reviews like this possible for giving us a great platform to work off of. And I'll talk to you all soon. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.